anyway, I always assumed it was Uptown Funk don't give it to you. But then I saw Uptown Funk gonna give it to you. One word difference, completely different meaning. Yeah, so this is the first episode. I'm kind of dreading it, to be honest.
When I come in a joint, enjoy. This is the state I'm in.
Hi there, and welcome to the first video of a new channel. In this video series, I'm going to be doing three things. 1, arranging and recording songs in my home studio on this narrowboat on the Thames. 2, planning and shooting music videos for those songs. And 3, documenting how they went. What went well and what didn't.
Sometimes.
I'm James Bell, and this is The Process. If you don't mind. So, what's the song we're doing today? Yeah, so this is the first episode of this series. This is the first algorithm video that I'm doing. I'm kind of dreading it, to be honest. I'm at the stage now where I just feel like all that's ahead of me is problems. Because I'm not really a filmmaker. You know, I've spent a lot of time being a musician who's based in the studio. Some of that translates onto screen, some of it doesn't. So yeah, it's going to be an adventure for both of us. Okay, so the story so far. If you are seeing this on YouTube, I am personally quite surprised because the point of this is not to actually make it for release. This is the test run. I wanted to pick a song to cover, and I wanted to pick something that I didn't mind if it screwed up. The first thing I thought about was, okay, right, think of a song that just does not need to be covered. Think of a song that just completely nails what it does. So you don't need to listen back and go, you know, maybe if I did it properly. For me, it's a fantastic pop song, and it's complete. I was going to say it's completely complete. Let's go with that. It's completely complete. It's a coherent, in a weird way. I sort of think of it as like it's a hermetically sealed song. Like it does everything it's supposed to do, and it's the kind of song where if someone were to say to me, "Uptown Funk cover," I'd be like, "Nah, I'm alright. It's fine. It doesn't need anything done to it." I didn't want to pick, like I've got a big list of songs that I think would be really good fun to do. I didn't want to pick one of them and then bollocks it up. Kind of the purpose of this video is to bollocks it up. Uptown Funk by Mark Ronson featuring Bruno Mars was released on the 10th of November 2014 to massive commercial and critical success. It topped the charts in multiple countries, broke several records, won numerous awards including Grammy Awards for Record of the Year and Best Pop Duo, and a Brit Award for Single of the Year. It's been played constantly on the radio, television and social media, as well as being featured in countless movies, TV shows and advertisements. And it was widely covered and even parodied by various artists and online personalities. The music video is currently the 9th most viewed video on YouTube with just shy of 5 billion views. So why did it hit such a nerve? Maybe it's the combination of Bruno Mars' super charismatic performance combined with Mark Ronson's deep knowledge of American music with references to Quincy Jones, Stevie Wonder, Nile Rodgers and of course James Brown. I think a big part of its appeal is that it sounds like everyone involved is just having a blast. Ronson and Mars have talked in interviews about how the song's creation was a very long, grueling process with lots of drafts, and it was nearly abandoned. Clearly, they both had a very specific vision, and they weren't going to stop until they got it right. Thus far, I've got like one idea for how to cover this. And yeah, I don't know. I've been dreading this, to be honest. I've been dreading putting this together because I don't know. I don't know whether or not I'm going to be able to make a music video. I think the thing is, I can make it. I'm sure I can make it. But like, will it take a decade? I hope I find something new and interesting to say. And also, you know, here's kind of a key thing. I think one of the dangers with Uptown Funk is there's a danger you can just be like winking all the way through. That you can fail to appreciate that the song is a bit of a wink at the camera anyway. It's an affectionate, it's a pastiche. I want to not be too winky and be too ironic. I think maybe the way in is just kind of relaxed, but really concentrating on the groove. And as I say that, I wonder whether or not that means, are we stripping out instruments here? Are we making this much more percussive? Are we leaving a lot of space in the mix? Quite possibly. That may well be the angle.
By the way, for complicated reasons, I can't actually include the music video in this episode, but there will be a link to it at the end. If you want a sneak peek now, or if you'd like to learn even more about how it was made, there's links in the description. Anyway, on with the show. Okay, so I mentioned that Uptown Funk is a really tricky song to approach because I feel like it does everything it's supposed to do, and coming at it from a different angle seems kind of weird. I was wondering whether or not some sort of Bobby McFerrin, very vocal-based approach might be the way in. I think of things in terms of a way in, and a really good example of this is that sometimes the way that you crack a problem like that is you just do something else. So whatever it was I was doing last night, I suddenly had an idea which just kicked off a chain reaction of a whole load of other ideas. I think the key thing is I was thinking, all right, it's all very well thinking of a thing that you can do that sounds good, like creating groove using voice as an instrument. But there are some kind of logistics to actually covering the song. There are some points in the song that you need to recreate somehow. There's like lots of build-ups, there's lots of tension you need to create, and you need instruments that are going to do that. You can decide, and I've kind of done this in the past, you can decide you're going to do the whole thing on kazoo, and then you just realize, oh yeah, kazoo just doesn't have the power to, carry this thing off. So I was last night just thinking about that logistical problem. Okay, like what instrument are we going to do? I was also thinking I'd like it to be fairly minimal. Generally speaking, I want to try and keep these tracks and these videos fairly minimal because otherwise it's going to take me 100 years. But it's also the case that the original track is quite dense and really well produced. And so in order to come up with something different, it makes sense to pick something minimal. What instrument is going to be able to do as much of the heavy lifting for that particular track as possible? And I thought, how about Hammond organ? How about just kind of standard B3 Hammond organ, particularly with some saturation, distortion, overdrive, something like that. A Hammond organ is an extraordinarily versatile instrument, and it's particularly good for filling up the mid-range. So if you want something that is minimal but yet can make a big sound, definitely something to play with. So that's something I'm going to try. So that was the starting point. And then a whole bunch of other ideas came off the back of that. One of the things that I'm doing in this particular episode, it's going to be kind of rambling and incoherent. I'm sorry about that, but I'm trying to figure out what the format is. And I feel like trying to come up with a new subgenre each time might be a fun thing to do. And I had this idea of kind of satanic lounge music, but satanic lounge music as a particular angle. And I'm also going to be doing a video of this, so I started getting ideas about what the video might be like, and I just kept getting this image of Christopher Walken, because, we've got this sort of 80s New York thing, and I just feel, and also a song about dancing. Yeah, anyway, those are some rambling ideas. Let's see where they go. I feel I'm gradually figuring out what I'm doing here. I'm not just figuring out this track, but also how I'm going to go through this process and make these videos in future. I'm starting by using GarageBand for iOS, which I'm a really big fan of. I like how simple and uncluttered it is, and I also like the fact that I can then take everything there and put it into Logic Pro and use all my fun plugins on it. So I've started putting the basic track together in GarageBand iOS, and I've also had a listen through the track. Uptown Funk. This is the fun part, listening through the track and breaking down its component parts. How many of these I'm going to use, I don't know. Ordinarily, I'd like to try to come up with some completely different approach to the track, particularly in terms of accompaniment. But these are some really nice I keep using that phrase, component parts. Let's just go through a few. So, first of all, I'm doing standard tuning in drop D, marginally in tune. You got this. And then there's this Nile Rodgers sort of neo-soul sound. Very clean, very compressed. One good example of this is this riff. So you would have... Another one I noticed, so we're in D, is... I might not be getting that exactly right, but that's what it sounded like in the first listen. The one part that I think I'd never really noticed before, which I think is so inspired, is you've got this big build. So much of the track is just vocals over a beat with no other instruments playing, which is kind of a bold move that I really like. There's a lot of space in that track. But so you have one time round, Uptown Funk, Don't Give It To You, and then you've got, and I'll try and count it in, you've got various, I think, synth parts doing this kind of rise, but you've got the bass going, cause Uptown Funk, don't give it to you, cause don't believe me, just one bound. That's just inspired, I think. So, am I gonna pinch those? I don't know. I like to be aware that they are there and have them as something I might want to draw inspiration from. I bet I'll use that bass part. I bet I'll probably use most of it. Okay, so I've just been crazy busy recently and haven't had as much time to work on this as I would have liked. I'd already got some of the basics down. Sometimes... I'm going to need that. Sometimes you, or sometimes I need like one riff or one idea that just is a catalyst for everything else and really starts the ideas flowing. I think I might have just got it. Here's what I got so far. So, got this. That bass line. And here's what I think the groove's going to be like. And then this riff. I like it. Even if it is a little bit, very superstitious. Good morning. It is a cold, is my breath condensing? Nearly. A cold January morning. Quite a lot happened since the last little update I did. Kind of the story so far. I'd got this one riff, you know, like high bass organ riff, which just was a bit different and felt interesting. And from that, I felt like, okay, now I can see how I can actually do a cover of this, you know, so well-known track in a way that's a little bit distinctive. Shall I do the thing? I'll do the thing. Every track I make, whether or not it's for myself, whether or not I'm doing something for YouTube, whether or not it's for a professional client, I am always trying to do three things. First of all, it needs to be distinctive. There needs to be a reason why this track exists. You know, if there's another track that does the same thing, if it's not distinctive, it doesn't have a reason to exist. So that's crucial. But being distinctive is quite easy. You know, you can just go pick up an instrument and play something totally random. You can just do noise, distinctive noise, and it will not sound like another track, but it won't be any good. And it won't be any good because it isn't coherent. The first thing it needs to be is distinctive. The second thing it needs to be is coherent. In other words, the distinctiveness needs to seem like it actually has a purpose. The third thing is it needs to sound good in a non-intellectual way. You know, you need to want, or I need to want to listen to it for pleasure. If it's a great idea, if it sounds great conceptually, oh, it's like this idea combined with this idea combined with this idea. If it's got a great aesthetic, but I wouldn't actually want to listen to it for pleasure, it's failed as far as I'm concerned. So those are the three things. And I often feel in the creative process that for me, and I think a lot of people get this, there's an initial hurdle that you need to get over where you're slightly feeling around in the dark and then it's like the light switches come on. So I did that organ riff, and then later that day, I thought I'm going to just add like one little bit to it. And then 2 hours later, I'd kind of fleshed out the whole track. Okay, so today we're recording some guitar parts. I've been thinking. So I had this idea, the Satanic Lounge version, and I thought about Hammond organ as being the key to it. And as I started to think about it, it occurred to me, Uptown Funk is basically a love letter to the pop music of the 1980s and also to the culture of the 1980s. There's all sorts of references, you know, Saint Laurent and this sort of thing. So I found myself coming up with all sorts of ideas that seemed to fit into more of a 1960s thing. And after a while I was like, why not just turn this into a love letter to the 1960s? So I had this idea of, okay, Hammond was quite a sort of 1960s sound, maybe some sort of Ennio Morricone fuzz guitar, slightly kind of John Barry, James Bond theme, that kind of thing. But as I've been developing the track, a different angle has started to appear. I found myself going back to the mid-60s to arguably one of the pioneers of funk. I'm sure he would have argued he was the pioneer of funk, a certain Mr. James Brown. And particularly James Brown's guitar player, Jimmy Nolan, who was kind of a proto Nile Rodgers in terms of guitar playing. And as that idea started to develop, I found myself fixating on one track in particular, Papa's Got a Brand New Bag. And I felt like this should be the sonic template for a 1960s version of Uptown Funk. And on that note, Uptown Funk starts off with the lyrics, "This hit, that ice cold, Michelle Pfeiffer, that white gold." Now, I don't want to update all of the references of Uptown Funk. I think that would get kind of tedious, but I do feel like that opening line, I just sort of thought, shouldn't it be another actress? Another actress that summed up the kind of 60s glamour in the way that Michelle Pfeiffer very much summed up the 80s. And I initially thought Mia Farrow, because it's got to be someone who kind of, the rhythm kind of scans in the lyrics. This hit, that ice cold, that Mia Farrow, that white gold. That might work, but then I thought it should really be Jane Fonda, shouldn't it? It should be kind of Barbarella, Jane Fonda. I always assumed it was Uptown Funk, don't give it to you. But then I saw Uptown Funk, gonna give it to you. One word difference, completely different meaning. Now, do we even think Uptown Funk has a meaning? Yes. Yes, we do. Here at The Process, if a song doesn't have meaning, we don't bother covering it. The way I see it, each song has got a message that the singer is singing, even if it's gibberish. The song is not about the message. The song is about the emotion of the message. That's why lots of great songs have got kind of daft lyrics. It's not about the message, it's about the emotion of the message. But in order to get the emotion right, you need to know what the message is. So I'm going to need to do some listening to Spotify. I'll be right back. I'm too hot. Okay, so the track is done. Yeah, no, the track is done. And last night I started planning the video. I realized as I was doing it that I'd somehow started to think that I was on the home straight and that I was nearly done. Now I just needed to kind of figure out the video. But the thing is, I have got years and years and years of experience of recording music. I've got zero experience of making music videos. I've like done a few, I'm not going to say half-ass attempts, but you know, I've done a few by myself for my own amusement where I don't really know what I'm doing. I want to try something much more ambitious now. And what I'm actually doing is storyboarding. Basically every camera shot, every lighting setup. I don't even know the words, every lighting setup. And yeah, why did I think this was going to be quick? So I actually went back to the Mark Ronson, Bruno Mars video to try and get some ideas about how that video does the 3-hour structure. It's a masterclass. It's really well done. Like the beginning of the video, which is quite a, act one in that video is really quite big. It's just them in the street from different angles. And then it starts to introduce a few, the band in, different locations. It's just a really kind of good progression. And that gave me some ideas about how I could break down what I want to do into 3 acts, but also how I could just be a bit simpler with it, I don't think I need to plan every single cut. I've got the initial ideas, I now need to flesh it out, but I also need to get ready to turn this into a film studio. Good morning. Have my spiced ginger tea. Come and have a look. What we are doing today is making some black outlines. The reason for this is that in order to be able to film a music video, I'm going to need to control the lighting. I've already got 2 of them done, this one and the one on the other side. Simply 5mm plywood with these kind of adhesive handles stuck on them. I had to cut out some little slats you can see there for that bit where the window sticks out. I think I'm going to get some dustbin liner and kind of put it around there again to block that light out. I've got a couple of other windows that have got different fittings, so that's going to be the challenge for this morning. I would film myself doing it. It's not that kind of maker channel because I'm not good enough to be able to do that kind of time effectively. So you'll just have to take my word for the fact that I did it and didn't get someone else to do it. By the way, message for future me, next time you think you're going to just quickly do some motion graphics, just remember that unless you're actually a professional animator, there's no such thing as quick motion graphics. Right, lest boat life seems too much like fun and games, work has stopped for the time being to do one of my top 6 least favourite jobs, changing yet another water pump. Oxford has got extremely hard water, it screws my water pumps. My neighbours have assured me that my pumps are too cheap. That sounds like prison slang, but it's not. So hopefully this will mean I won't need to change it for another 5 years or something. I live in eternal optimism. Anyway, this is what we're... Come and join. Enjoy. This is the state I'm in. Okay, so I'm nearing the end of this process. At the beginning of this, I said I thought it was unlikely that anyone would ever see this video. And there was one reason particularly for that. And that's that I'm just not sure whether or not I can get the song Uptown Funk copyrighted. I don't know how that works. I've kind of been putting it off till the very end. And I suppose I've been putting it off to the very end because if I found out that I was never going to show it, that might take some of the joy out of the making process. But I'm going to go next door now, fire up the computer, have a look and see. I don't mind with this first song if it's kind of expensive, but there is obviously going to be a kind of price limit beyond which I just can't justify spending it. So let's find out. Okay, I've had a look at the website for the company that's kind of recommended for getting licensing. Just getting audio only seems to be pretty affordable. Seems to be between kind of $15 and $50. But if you're making a music video with it, you don't just have the mechanical copyright, you have the synchronization. So this company does seem to sell custom licenses. They cost $300 for 5 tracks. And I saw on the website, it says $300, and then underneath it says, improve your odds, suggesting that you might pay them $300 and you won't get a license at the end of it, which I initially did feel like, how very the music business. Basically, if I can make this work and I can afford it, you'll see this Uptown Funk video, and if I can't, you won't. Yes, the video is done, and although a lot of it looks unprofessional to me, I'm actually really happy with it. One change of direction I went into for the video was I was originally thinking of leaning into not just like the sound of Say It Loud era James Brown, but his whole impact on popular culture, which was huge. Everybody has sampled James Brown in one way or another. His look, his sound, his lyrics. And actually, I mean, relatively recently, there's a current artist who I feel like has done sort of the definitive modern take on James Brown. And that's Janelle Monáe in the song Tightrope. I am not going to do anything as good as that in that lane, so yeah. So what I ended up doing instead was filling the video with more general kind of 1960s pop culture references, things like the moon landing, Richard Nixon, movie title sequences of Alfred Hitchcock and the James Bond films, and quite a bit on the murderous HAL 9000 AI from the film 2001: A Space Odyssey. Not entirely sure why. Okay, for me, the most important thing this track and this video needed to achieve was it needed to create the right feeling, the right kind of emotion, the right mood. And for me, it did that. So that is actually the thing I'm happiest with. Being a bit more specific, I was really surprised how well the horns sounded. I mean, that was just using samples, and usually you can tell when they're samples. To me, that sounds like a live, horn section. What else? I liked the way the green screen experiment worked, particularly at the beginning of the video. That said, I like how the green screen experiment worked, but some of it, particularly at the end, is shockingly bad. Like, you can pause and I have no hands. So, yeah. But in the process of doing it, I felt like I learnt from my mistakes, and I would hope the next time I do green screen, it's going to look a lot better. All right, here's another one. I kind of feel like, for me at least, there's an unavoidable comparison between my vocal ability and Bruno Mars's vocal ability. I think this is why people tend to do radically different versions of really successful songs with great singers, because I feel like his vocal ad-libs are kind of like a nimble tennis player and mine are kind of like a bumper car. But far and away, the biggest problem for me has been how long this whole process has taken. It took 2 years. And I mean, there are reasons for that. Part of it was I was just learning to be a filmmaker. I don't have any training in filmmaking. No one's taught me how to operate a camera or edit. So there's been a lot of trial and error. Part of it has been me figuring out the format as I go along. Again, like a lot more trial and error. Part of it has also been just juggling day jobs and childcare and just generally keeping the lights on. But perhaps the biggest and most frustrating component of that is I just work really slowly. This really reinforced it for me. I just work really slowly. I know that I have to kind of take my sweet time if I want any given project to give me the results that I want. So, I mean, it drives me mad, but I'm kind of learning to live with it. Although that said, whether or not I can actually build an audience on YouTube with this slower production rate remains to be seen. I have learnt so much about the way that I work. I'm a really big fan of Adam Savage, movie effects guy at Industrial Light and Magic, former host of the TV show Mythbusters, and now YouTuber extraordinaire. And he talks a lot about how on every single project he's working on, he has this phenomenon where 70% of the way through, he's just hit with this panic where he doesn't know what the hell he's doing and he feels completely out of his depth. And he said when he was working at Industrial Light and Magic, he always thought someone was going to tap him on the shoulder and say, look, you clearly don't know what you're doing. You need to leave. But he said that he's learnt that that happens every time. And now that he knows that, he knows he just needs to push through and he'll finish fine. What I learnt on this is that I get that, but I don't get it 70% of the way through. I get it 10% of the way through. I had this initial kind of burst of confidence, maybe even arrogance. I'm just like, yep, this is going to be simple. I am good at this. And then everything I do just sounds terrible. But now that I know that, I know I just need to push through that, and it's just the way I work, and that's kind of the order I do things, and then it starts to take shape. So that was something I learned. Something else I learned from this whole process is really fundamental about how I think I'm going to make these videos in future, because I feel like I figured out the filming style. What I thought I was going to need to do was plan everything meticulously in advance. I thought I was going to need to basically storyboard everything. As I got into it, I realized what made a lot more sense was just shooting a whole bunch of options and then finding it in the edit. It makes sense because it's less kind of time intensive. It's very difficult to imagine how everything is going to fit together when you can see nothing. But also, just more practically, when I think about the times when I've planned everything in advance, I just end up with boring results. So much of what I do is about happy accidents. So yeah, this was really important for me. Working out that for this particular format, it's all about finding it in the edit. And one more specific aspect of that, I did loosely kind of stick to a 3-act structure in the video, but I realized that when it actually comes to coming up with ideas, it's just as simple as, all right, now do something interesting. Now do something different and interesting over and over again, moment to moment. And I don't need any more of a structure than that. Like I can just feel like, all right, we've had enough of this idea, time to move on to something else. And I feel like, and you know, future videos may kind of scupper this, but I feel like that's actually all I need when editing videos. It's just that sense of the, all right, that's done, time for something new. I just want to give a very quick warning to anyone who's sensitive to flashing images. I don't think this video is going to be a problem, but there are like a couple of little bits where it does have a flashing effect, so I just wanted to flag that. Right, 2 years in the making. Let's watch the video.